In the golden era of gaming, one title stood out as a revolutionary masterpiece: Prince of Persia. Released in 1989, this platformer game not only introduced players to an immersive and captivating storyline but also set new standards for animation, fluid movement, and cinematic gaming experiences. Developed by Jordan Mechner, the game is a testament to his vision for creating a cinematic adventure that transcended the limitations of the technology of its time. Prince of Persia opens with a gripping narrative. The player, controlling an unnamed protagonist, must navigate through a treacherous dungeon within a strict time limit to save the princess from an impending doom. The game's design is meticulous, focusing on fluid movements, realistic animations, and an engaging combination of puzzle-solving and sword-fighting elements. The characters' lifelike movements were groundbreaking at the time, showcasing the potential of video games as a storytelling medium. The architectural design of the levels, inspired by Middle Eastern art and architecture, added a layer of authenticity to the game, immersing players in a visually stunning and exotic world. The innovative use of rotoscoping, a technique where real human movements are traced to create lifelike animations, set Prince of Persia apart from its contemporaries, delivering an unparalleled gaming experience. As players ventured through the perilous dungeons filled with traps and enemies, they not only faced a test of their gaming skills but also enjoyed a cinematic narrative unfolding in real time. The game's success led to its adaptation on various platforms, cementing its status as a classic and laying the foundation for future action-adventure games. Prince of Persia is a cinematic platform game developed and published by Broderbund for the Apple II in 1989. It was designed and implemented by Jordan Mechner. Taking place in medieval Persia, players control an unnamed protagonist who must venture through a series of dungeons to defeat the evil Grand Vizier Jafar and save an imprisoned princess. Much like Karateka, Mechner's first video game, Prince of Persia used rotoscoping for its fluid and realistic animation. For this process, Mechner used as reference for the character's movements videos of his brother doing acrobatic stunts in white clothes and swashbuckler films such as The Adventures of Robin Hood. The game was critically acclaimed and, while not an immediate commercial success, sold many copies as it was ported to a wide range of platforms after the original Apple II release. It is believed to have been the first cinematic platformer and inspired many games in this subgenre, such as Another World. Its success launched the Prince of Persia franchise, consisting of two sequels, Prince of Persia II: The Shadow and the Flame, 1993, and Prince of Persia 3D, 1999, and two reboots, Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time, 2003, which was followed by three sequels of its own, and Prince of Persia, 2008. Development for the game began in 1985, the year Jordan Mechner graduated from Yale University. At that time, Mechner had already developed one game, Karateka, for distributor Broderbund. Despite expecting a sequel to Karateka, the distributor gave Mechner creative freedom to create an original game. The game drew from several sources of inspiration beyond video games, including literature such as the Arabian Nights stories, and films such as Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Adventures of Robin Hood. Prince of Persia was programmed in 6502 assembly, a low-level programming language. Mechner used an animation technique called rotoscoping, with which he used footage to animate the characters' sprites and movements. To create the protagonist's platforming motions, Mechner traced video footage of his younger brother running and jumping in white clothes. To create the game's sword-fighting sprites, Mechner rotoscoped the final duel scene between Errol Flynn and Basil Rathbone in the 1938 film The Adventures of Robin Hood. Though the use of rotoscoping was regarded as a pioneering move, Mechner later recalled that when we made the decision with Prince of Persia, I wasn't thinking about being cutting edge, we did it essentially because I'm not that good at drawing or animation, and it was the only way I could think of to get lifelike movement. Also unusual was the method of combat. Protagonist and enemies fought with swords, not projectile weapons, as was the case in most contemporary games. Mechner has said that when he started programming, the first 10 minutes of the film Raiders of the Lost Ark had been one of the main inspirations for the characters' acrobatic responses in a dangerous environment. During development, the prince was meant to be a non-violent character, so the game didn't initially include combat. However, due to finding the gameplay to be dull and after incessant demand from Tommy Pierce, a colleague of his, Mechner added sword fighting to the game and created Shadow Man, the prince's doppelganger. Guards were later added when Mechner managed to make use of an additional 12K of the Apple II's memory. For the Japanese computer ports, RC Software and River Hillsoft enhanced the visuals and redesigned the prince's appearance, introducing the classic turban and vest look. This version became the basis for the Macintosh version and later Prince of Persia ports and games by Broderbund. River Hillsoft's FM Towns version also added a Red Book CD audio soundtrack. The Game Boy version was the first game to feature music by Tommy Tallarico. He was a playtester for Virgin Interactive and offered to compose the music free of charge. The game is set in medieval Persia. While the Sultan is fighting a war in a foreign land, his vizier Jafar, a wizard, seizes power. His only obstacle to the throne is the Sultan's daughter. Jafar locks her in a tower and orders her to become his wife, or she would die within 60 minutes, extended to 120 minutes in the Super NES version, which has longer and harder levels. The game's unnamed protagonist, whom the princess loves, is thrown prisoner into the palace dungeons. In order to free her, he must escape the dungeons, get to the palace tower and defeat Jafar before time runs out. In addition to guards, various traps and dungeons, the protagonist is further hindered by his own doppelganger, conjured out of a magic mirror. The main objective of the player is to lead the unnamed protagonist out of dungeons and into a tower before time runs out. This cannot be done without bypassing traps and fighting hostile swordsmen. The game consists of 12 levels, though some console versions have more. However, a game session may be saved and resumed at a later time only after level 2. The player has a health indicator that consists of a series of small red triangles. The player starts with 3. Each time the protagonist is damaged, cut by sword, fallen from 2 floors of heights or hit by a falling rock, the player loses one of these indicators. There are small jars containing potions of several colors and sizes. The red potions scattered throughout the game restore 1 health indicator. The blue potions are poisonous, and they take 1 life indicator as damage. There are also large jars of red potion that increase the maximum number of health indicators by 1, and large jars of green potion that grants a temporarily ability to hover. If the player's health is reduced to 0, the protagonist dies. Subsequently, the game is restarted from the beginning of the stage in which the protagonist died, but the timer will not reset to that point, effectively constituting a time penalty. There is no counter for the number of lives, but if time runs out, the princess will be gone and the game will be over, subject to variations per console versions. The DOS version allows the player already in the very late part of level 12 to continue after time is out with no extra life, so restarting the level by pressing appropriate buttons is not death, thus not failing the game yet. Any player's death, including having killed Jafar then falling from excessive floors of heights, also fails the game, in which case the princess is also gone. Only defeating Jafar and exiting level 12 alive will still save the princess, with a negative time score in the Hall of Fame. The Macintosh port will not give the player a game over once they reach the final area of level 12, stored in data as level 13, provided they make it there on time. The player must cross the magic bridge and make a screen transition to a room with falling tiles to be safe. Once there, they will always be allowed to continue, regardless of deaths or time expiration. Running out of time at any point before the screen transition, including the bridge, will result in game over as usual. The Super NES remake allows the players to save themselves after time is out, to get the game over at the end without the princess saved. There are 3 types of traps that the player must bypass: spike traps, deep pits, 3 or more levels deep, and guillotines. Getting caught or falling into each results in the instant death of the protagonist. In addition, there are gates that can be raised for a short period of time by having the protagonist stand on the activation trigger. The player must pass through the gates while they are still open, avoiding locking triggers. Sometimes, there are various traps between an unlocked trigger and a gate. Hostile swordsman, Jafar and his guards, are yet another obstacle. The player obtains a sword in the first stage, which they can use to fight these adversaries. The protagonist's sword maneuvers are as follows: advance, back off, slash, parry, or a combined parry then slash attack. Enemy swordsmen also have a health indicator similar to that of the protagonist. Killing them involves slashing them until their health indicator is depleted or by pushing them into traps while fighting. In Stage 3, a skeletal swordsman comes to life and does battle with the protagonist. The skeleton cannot be killed with the sword, but it can be defeated by being dropped into one of the pits. A unique trap encountered in Stage 4, which serves as a plot device, is a magic mirror, whose appearance is followed by an ominous leitmotif. The protagonist is forced to jump through this mirror, upon which his doppelganger emerges from the other side, draining the protagonist's health to 1. This apparition later hinders the protagonist by stealing a potion and throwing him into a dungeon. The protagonist cannot kill this apparition as they share lives. Any damage inflicted upon one also hurts the other. Therefore, the protagonist must merge with his doppelganger. In Stage 8, the protagonist becomes trapped behind a gate before he can reach the exit. In this stage, the princess sends a white mouse to trigger the gate open again, allowing him to proceed to the next level. In Stage 12, protagonist faces his shadow doppelganger. Once they have merged, the player can run across an invisible bridge to a new area, where they battle Jafar. Once the final checkpoint is reached, the player will no longer get a game over screen even if time runs out, except if the player dies after the timeout. Once Jafar is defeated, his spell is broken and the princess can be saved. In addition, the in-game timer is stopped at the moment of Jafar's death, and the time remaining will appear on the high scores. Prince of Persia received a positive critical reception, but was initially a commercial failure in North America, where it had sold only 7,000 units each on the Apple II and IBM PC by July 1990. It was when the game was released in Japan and Europe that year that it became a commercial success. In July 1990, the NEC PC 9801 version sold 10,000 units as soon as it was released in Japan. It was then ported to various different home computers and video game consoles, eventually selling 2 million units worldwide by the time its sequel Prince of Persia 2, The Shadow and the Flame, 1993, was in production. Charles Ardai of Computer Gaming World wrote that the game packages claim that it breaks new ground with animation so uncannily human it must be seen to be believed was true. He wrote that Prince of Persia succeeds at being more than a running jumping game, in other words, a gussied-up Nintendo game, because it captures the feel of those great old adventure films, citing Thief of Baghdad, Frankenstein, and Dracula. Ardai concluded that it was a tremendous achievement in games comparable to that of Star Wars in film. In 1991, the game was ranked the 12th best Amiga game of all time by Amiga Power. In 1992, the New York Times described the Macintosh version as having brilliant graphics and excellent sound. Reviewing the Genesis version, GamePro praised the extremely fluid animation of the player character and commented that the controls are difficult to master but nonetheless very effective. Comparing it to the Super NES version, they summarized that the Genesis version has better graphics, and the SNES has better music. Otherwise, the two are identical in almost every way. Electronic Gaming Monthly, EGM, likewise assessed the Genesis version as an excellent conversion of the classic action game, and added that the game's challenging strategy and technique give it high longevity. EGM's panel of 4 reviewers each gave it a rating of 8 out of 10. adding up to an overall score of 32 out of 40. In 1991, PC Format named Prince of Persia one of the 50 best computer games ever, highlighting its unbelievably good animation. In 1996, Computer Gaming World named Prince of Persia the 84th best game ever, with the editors calling it an acrobatic platformer with amazingly fluid action. In 1995, Flux ranked the game 42nd on their top 100 video games. Prince of Persia influenced cinematic platformers such as Another World and Flashback, as well as action-adventure games such as Tomb Raider, which used a similar control scheme. A few DOS games were created using exactly the same game mechanics of the DOS version of Prince of Persia. Mokshevik created Cruel World in 1993 and Capstone Software created Zorro in 1995. Prince of Persia was remade and ported by Gameloft. The remake, titled Prince of Persia Classic, was released on June 13, 2007, to the Xbox Live Arcade, and on October 23, 2008, on the PlayStation Network. It features the same level design and general premise but contained 3D rendered graphics, more fluid movements, and Sands of Time aesthetics. The gameplay and controls were slightly adjusted to include a wall jump move and different swordplay. New game modes were also added, such as Time Attack and Survival. The game has also been released on Android. Reverse engineering efforts by fans of the original game have resulted in detailed documentation of the file formats of the MS-DOS version. Various level editors have been created that can be used to modify the level files of the game. With these editors and other software, over 60 mods have been created. In April 2012, Jordan Mechner established a GitHub repository containing the long-thought-lost 69 original Apple II source code for Prince of Persia. A technical document describing the operation of this source code is available on Mechner's website. In April 2020, Mechner did an AMA on Reddit where he stated that he would be releasing his journals from the development of the game as a book and users could ask any questions that they may have about the game to him. In conclusion, Prince of Persia, 1989, is more than just a game, it's a landmark in the history of gaming. Its impact is still felt today, with its influence evident in the evolution of action-adventure and platformer genres. The combination of compelling storytelling, innovative animation techniques, and challenging gameplay has created a timeless legacy that continues to captivate gamers across generations. Prince of Persia is not merely a game, it's an enduring testament to the power of creativity and innovation in the world of interactive entertainment.